And we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm very excited to be joined today by Matt Kalish. He is a co-founder and the president of DraftKings. If you didn't know, DraftKings are doing some really interesting things with real-world sports, fantasy sports, gaming, and NFTs. And we're going to dig into all of that today. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Doing well, Anthony. How are you?
I'm very well, alive and well here in soggy, rainy Dublin, Ireland. Not my usual spot. I feel my Portuguese tan is fading by the day, but I'm happy. I'm excited to be here with you, and thank you so much for taking the time with us. For those who don't know about DraftKings, about your origin story, could you give us a couple of minutes just on what DraftKings is about and give some context to the show?
Yeah, so DraftKings is in the U.S. the leading fantasy sports operator. We in the last 5 years have also expanded our product offering into sports betting and iGaming, where we're also in really nice market leadership positions. And most recently, we launched DraftKings Marketplace and entered into a few new ventures in Web3. And so kind of multi-product brand at this point in the US that has over 10 million customers who pay to compete in fantasy sports contests or partake in sports betting, iGaming, and collecting.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And for those who don't know, I really want to do a quick double click on fantasy sports because I think that probably has lots of connotations from different people all around the world. Just give us a little bit of context into what do you guys think about with when you say fantasy sports?
So about 12 years back, we launched DraftKings initially for the Major League Baseball season. And we offer daily fantasy sports primarily, which is 1 day length fantasy competition where you build one or more lineups, and then you're competing against other people's lineups that they've created. And based on the fantasy points that they earn through their real life performance, you get a ranking in your tournament, and you could win prizes as big as $1 million during football season, every single week. And it's based on a salary cap. So you can't just go take all the very best players at every position. You have a budget and you have to kind of determine like who you want to spend up for, what sleepers you think might have a good week that historically haven't been as good. And then we've also introduced new products like Best Ball, for example, which is at the start of the football season, you draft a team and you ride with them all season long. We'll kind of optimize your lineup for you, and like whoever drafted the best team in the preseason, they win at the end of the year based on the season long performance. So it's a few different versions of fantasy, and the most popular today is daily fantasy sports.
Got you. So it's about your ball knowledge. It's about putting that together and maybe competing to win prizes relating to fantasy leagues in American sports. In the UK, I'm British, so fantasy football leagues is kind of a relatively familiar thing around football or soccer. And so people do create their teams and swap them in and out, but it was always a little bit of a kind of slow moving stage proposition. It feels like you guys have brought some good energy to that concept. So now we know what fantasy sports is about. Let's get into the blockchain bit. So I'd really be interested in to know, where did the kind of the Web3 origin story happen for DraftKings? How did you guys look at kind of your current proposition, games, fantasy sports, and think, you know what, blockchain fits here or Web3 fits here? Talk us through kind of some of that journey of discovery for you guys.
Yeah, over the last 10 years, we built a bunch of products that are really meant to serve the sports fan in the US, not just generic sports fan, but like a skin in the game type of sports fan. Like they want to be predicting things. They want to have something on the line. The competition, and that's the spirit of competition, is big. And there's lots of forms of that today, but 10 years back, it actually wasn't that amazing in the US to be a sports fan. There was like not much going on. Sports betting wasn't offered almost anywhere in the country aside from Las Vegas. Fantasy sports was mainly office pools that people would play on ESPN or Yahoo, the big media company platforms. Those were often free, or maybe it's like $20 that you're playing with your coworkers. And there wasn't really any outlet, though. If you're like a serious competitor, you really want to go after it. You want to play day in, day out. The other thing, too, is the draft is the best part of fantasy. Everyone loves drafting. And so we had this idea of daily fantasy where every day you can draft a new team and you're not just like stuck with what you picked at the start of the year. You can take days off, weeks off. It's not like a penalty if you don't set a lineup for a week straight. You can just jump in anytime you want. So the heart and soul of the company was always serving that skin in the game customer. And when we launched sports betting 5 years ago, we became a leader in that, mainly due to the brand strength. And like people think of DraftKings as where you go to compete, to win money on sports, etc. And, when I guess 2021, like kind of in the midst of COVID there was a lot of attention from our audience going into collecting and alt investment, like stuff like physical sports cards, but also NFTs and like some of the momentum around crypto and some of the new blockchain projects were really becoming more and more popular. Like if you think of NBA Top Shots, for example, like some of these projects started to take a lot of like mind share, and we were just seeing more and more attention going towards the idea of collecting and alt investment categories. And so at DraftKings, we built up, a blockchain solution. It's DraftKings Marketplace is the consumer facing kind of brand. And initially we were doing some stuff in the collectible space. And then over the course of 6 months or so, we really gravitated towards a single project that DraftKings is focused on now in Web3, which is called Reignmakers. And it kind of brings together everybody's favorite things. Reignmakers it's a fantasy game. It's a collecting process, like you're opening packs to collect athletes that you can use in your fantasy teams throughout the year. You can compete for over $30 million of prizes this NFL season, just based on using the cards that you own with no fee on top of that. It has aspects of things like Madden Ultimate Team, where you just build and improve your team over time and compete with it, and it gets better and better, and then you compete better, that virtuous cycle of improvement of your team. People who like games like Magic the Gathering, like competitive card battling games, all of these things are kind of converged into this one product called Reignmakers, which is collect a team, use it to compete in fantasy, and then you can win your share of over 30 million of prizes this football season.
Fantastic. So you've got the gamification, you've got the kind of the real world, fandom. Players may want to kind of try and get their favorite players to collect the ultimate team. You've got a digital collectible component to that as well. The performance of those collectibles has some sort of value at the same time. So you've got a marketplace and a trading aspect for people who want to improve their team just based on performance as opposed to the cards they want. So you're bringing in kind of aspects of loving sports, fandom, competition, and monetization all in the kind of same space. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's right. And we see people, they have opinions about who's going to have a good season. So the marketplace is very vibrant. Like we have one of the top performing projects. If you look at like some of the industry leaderboards and stuff like that, like there's a lot of activity around trading the cards. So people can list them up for sale at a certain price on the marketplace. They can get offers and kind of buy and sell different cards in real time throughout the season. And so there's that kind of like speculation about like, this card is going to grow in value if the player has a good season and they're more helpful in the fantasy game, winning prizing.
Got you. And I have a curiosity here, specifically around the data part of this, because I think the one thing that's really interesting about the fantasy leagues or ultimate team type of content is you're adding real world performances or real world data to collectibles and to gaming. So you will get special edition cards of a particular week for player of the week or MVP or whatever else it might be. For you guys as DraftKings, how do you link the real world data to the content or to the collectibles? Is it a static thing where it's a one-time player and that player runs the whole season and it's their stats? Do you have special editions? How are you working with it?
Yeah, so the collections that people build have utility into the future. There's a ton of utility for the current season cards, and then out into the future, like last season's cards are being used to compete this year, but also to improve your collection this year. Like you can kind of trade them in and get new cards for the current season. So there's a bunch of different like utility around once you own a player's card. you can use it for competition. You can use it to like redeem for rewards in the current season, etc. There's leaderboards, like collector score type leaderboards, and a bunch of different like missions, achievements, lots of ways that you can kind of play the game and use the cards to earn and to have utility. And our core platform in fantasy is really like super built out and amazing. We already have fantasy games that we're running, every single day across over a dozen sports. And we're really using that same technology platform and applying it in Reignmakers. So the main difference is the draft. Like you're using NFT player cards that you own to fill your roster. And once you use it, then it's used. And for that week, you can only use it once. So there's like a constrained supply around like how many lineups there could ever be based on the NFT supply, and that's a little different than our business that's in cash, which is anyone who wants to play can just jump in, and so it's a little bit more of a, like, you have these assets, you figure out what you want to use where in which fantasy competitions and like what prizes you want to go for.
Got you. Sounds good. And it wouldn't be a Blockchain Won't Save the World show if we didn't talk a little bit about the blockchain. If you don't want to get into the super technical detail, that's okay. We haven't kind of pricked this one in advance, but you mentioned about having NFTs and kind of those being available to players in their wallets. How do the blockchain mechanics work around this? Is it kind of the wallet is linked into your DraftKings account? Is it kind of an external wallet where kind of anyone can see that on their MetaMask or specific blockchain wallet? How does that user experience work today?
We have a lot of flexibility. Like, our technology is quite flexible in terms of, like, for example, we mint on Polygon. We have a great relationship with Polygon. We're one of the largest validators and one of the biggest kind of users of the blockchain in general. And so we mint on Polygon into a custodial wallet that DraftKings has, and then we kind of keep a ledger of ownership. And so there is flexibility, though, in our tech to off-ramp into, for example, like if you wanted to take it off, DraftKings off-chain, we have projects like that we've done in the collectible space where people can do that, such as Autograph. And it's something that, because in Reignmakers, it's so endemic to the experience to be able to compete with the cards in fantasy, we're not focused really on that aspect of like super flexible on-ramp, off-ramp. It's much more focused on just building an amazing experience on platform. And that being said, like, the future has a lot of possibilities. And I think, right now is a little bit of a unique time in blockchain, or in, I guess you would say, decentralized blockchain land, where a little bit of like bad news out there. There's a little bit of kind of uncertainty. There's a lot of like people getting scammed or fraud or whatever, like lots of things to work through, where we thought it prudent to like protect the experience early on. And I think over time, though, there's like a lot of flexibility in terms of how to think about like to what extent it would make sense to have a on-platform and off-platform presence with Reignmakers.
Yeah, for sure. And you could imagine, I've had conversations with other guests around this, around kind of what is the opportunity with NFTs or decentralized technology around gaming, and the ability to have content that can go from game to game, or that where you can have those assets mean something in other people's platforms or other people's applications. To your point right now, it's enough for those to be owned by individuals, to be minted as NFTs, so you can check the supply, so there's transparency around how many are minted. Right, a lot of games, people complain about drop rates. People complain about the companies just issuing more of a particular type to get more money and get more funds, etc. Whereas for you guys, it's an opportunity to provide transparency. At the moment, it's not about interoperability, but like you said, you can appreciate, or you can see the opportunity of where that could happen. And should somebody choose to just suddenly pop up and say, you know what, I'm going to invest a bunch of money in a platform for Reignmakers content to get reused in a metaverse, and you can turn up with your lineup and you can kind of walk around in a metaverse with whichever baseball or golf or football players are behind you just for fun. That, I guess, there's a licensing challenge to that down the road, but if somebody wants to start creating that content, that's possible.
Yeah, the space we play in at DraftKings is, so first, it's regulated because we have gambling licenses and we have like both in fantasy for real money as well as sports betting, casino licenses, etc. So we have a very high standard around like any product we operate. We would want to make sure that it's sort of compliant, that regulators are approving the product. So there's a lot of sometimes rules that can come into play involved with that, and education is even like a challenge a lot of the time when you're talking to, say, like a regulator or something. Everybody's not equally up to speed on blockchain technology and what the implications. You see it in the news when people are talking about crypto. It's like not everybody has the same level of knowledge about the product, the technology. So sometimes decisions get made that don't necessarily, it might not make sense, but it is based on like a limited amount of information that decision makers have. And then the other thing is the Reignmakers product is licensed. So we have licensed IP through the NFLPA. And so we can use player images and likeness and share in the profits with the players and all of that. And so that just creates another stakeholder, right? Where we want to make sure that we're collaborating. And so it's really this kind of combination of, the innovative spirit of the game, plus this amazing IP that we're getting from NFLPA, plus making sure we're operating in a way that is, infallible, basically. So we're putting those pieces together and doing it all quite rapidly. So I would say 18 months in market. So a ton of work has been undertaken, and our roadmap is long and feels very much like a startup inside the company, I would say.
That's awesome. And it must be brilliant to be part of that energy at the same time. And I don't think you're ever going to get short of ideas, which will be the interesting thing. It's really about, like you said, there's commercial complexity, there's legal complexity, there's regulatory complexity to developing these things. It's not just, it's not just as easy as minting NFTs. Right, the NFT minting part is probably the easiest part of all of the stuff that you get to do. Everything else that sits behind a proposition like this is super hard. Let's give the guys something to get excited about, or to go into a little bit more detail. Tell me about Reignmakers Football Season 2. As somebody who is an NFL fan, albeit a Miami Dolphins fan, I picked poorly as a child, and it has been many, many years of no success. Much like my choice of soccer team, actually, Newcastle United, very similar lot for the last few years. I did get lucky with ice hockey, though. I was a Pittsburgh Penguins fan through a friend of mine, so I did see a few Stanley Cup wins in my life, which I'm grateful for. But let's get back to football. Tell us, what can fans expect? What's changed versus Season 1? Let's go into a little bit more detail, please, Matt.
Season 1 was definitely, I would consider it a minimum viable product. It was, you would collect cards through auctions or through opening packs, and then you could compete with them in fantasy. And we had a couple other mechanics that were pretty simple, in addition to winning fantasy contests to earn prizing, which were like a leaderboard-based program that had rewards based on quality of your collection, some missions and achievements that were pretty limited. And that was pretty much the whole story. Coming into this season, we've really enhanced the game quite a bit, and people playing will notice the quality of the experience is way better, but there's also a lot of new mechanics. So probably the most interesting to me is what we call our craft and burn portal. So this is where you can take cards that you own, put it into this engine, and then it pumps out a new NFT. So there's recipes that you can fill out where you're here's 5 cards from last season, give me a new pack for the current season or whatever. And so the recipes are predefined. People can now engage with that to improve their collection, or just own control over their NFTs more, make more decisions, so I'd say that's a big piece. We've started to do digital pack breaks as a distribution format, which is something that's really popular. So the way that works is it would be a group of people who are sharing the output of packs as a nice experience where, maybe you're getting the first quarterback that gets pulled out of a pack or something like that, so it can get fractionalized, and then people, have that experience of if the thing I'm looking for comes out, then I get it. And so it's a new format that's become more and more popular, and more of our pack sales are kind of coming from that. There's a lot more in our core products integration. So when you're playing daily fantasy sports, the same thing you would do with cash, Like there's also tournaments now that have Reignmakers prizing, so you can build your collection just playing the other games on the site. Major improvements to like our leaderboard, our missions, our achievements platforms, like all of that has been enhanced. So it's just like a much deeper experience. And so much less of that like minimum viable product feel. And it's like an actual product that's getting closer to, I think a place where we're very, very excited about going big with it.
I like that. And you can see some of the familiar concepts or features that you've seen maybe in video games or in others that you've been able to bring in. The crafting component of that is super interesting. The excitement of pack opening. With Malice Aforethought, we probably should have tried to do a pack opening live on the show. That would have been maybe a LinkedIn first, actually. That would have been fun to do. If only we'd rehearsed.
Yeah, right now it's the biggest time of the year for that because the content, like you want to have the cards to use going into week one. People are playing now, even in the preseason. Like we had a preseason, I think it was the 5th of August or 6th of August, it went live. Before the first week of preseason, we even had people opening like those initial packs so that they could compete in those games. But you really want to be building your collection now so you can use it in week 1, week 2, just get the most utility from the cards. If you buy them in week 4, you miss like 3 weeks of the season. So the whole idea is like people are opening lots of packs now. They're trading in the marketplace, trying to build up their collection, making their strategies for the year. Also, there's like some decisions to be made about what tier of the game you want to play at. Like we have 5 tiers of core, rare, elite, legendary, up to Reignmaker. And the cards are increasingly scarce as you get to higher levels and the prizes get way bigger. So people are working on also improving their collection's rarity so they can go after contests that require like more rare cards, So it's a strategy time of the year. It's like a building your collection time of the year. And then once the season starts, that's when people are really just competing, yielding out utility and prizing and all of that.
Very cool. I like that part of it. So if you get really lucky with some of your early drops, if you get a couple of Reignmaker cards, you're like, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll take some from the marketplace. Maybe I'll pair that with a couple that I've got, and I'll run that in. Or people who's like, I don't want to invest behind this right now, or the card luck wasn't great for me this time around, so I'm happy to stay somewhere in the middle or play casual this year. I do like that you're able to bring back in the previous year's content, right? So I think a big challenge that people have with video games is that if you have that seasonal content, people, when they've finished the 2022 season, that game's done. Any time, investment, assets you put into that content is gone, right? And you've got to start fresh the next season. Some people love that experience, but it doesn't necessarily allow for continuity. And the game makers know that, right? But actually with you guys, you're trying to make sure that there's a way for people who've had a previous season or have invested to still bring that back through and stay with you for future seasons, which I think is a good way of staying respectful to the customers.
Yeah, it's a really important part of the game to think about, like your multi-year strategy for sure. Like a lot of people at the end of last season, because football season is 6 months out of the year or so, September through February, and so we definitely noticed that like there was players who didn't really want to just sit on and hold cards from February to September. So they would go hit the marketplace and sell them. And then there was people who were trying to like buy end of season just because there was more kind of like value there. And they were comfortable just holding and using, the utility of the cards in a few months when the season kicks off again. So there's a lot of like time-based decision-making that's going on in terms of like when people are buying, what they're buying. Anytime there's a change in depth chart too, we see just like lots of action on, or if there's speculation, like a quarterback who's not doing well, people start to really want to be stocking up on like who's next if that situation doesn't work out. So you really see the reflection of what's happening in real life in the market and, all of the data that's available out there in terms of, the transactions in the marketplace and players' values over time. It's really fascinating data.
Very, very cool. What was the high value card in the last season? Or what was the must have card that people really wanted to clamor to get hold of?
What comes to mind was there was a Cooper Kupp, he's a wide receiver, had like the best season a wide receiver has ever had in 2021-22 season. And so last year coming in, I believe he had the highest sale, which was $25,000 Cooper Kupp Reignmaker. There was countless like multi thousands of dollar sales. It's the more scarce the card is and the higher quality of the player, the more fantasy points you'd expect them to earn. That drives a lot of the value. And kind of like looking into the future too, it's fascinating to think about, hey, if we can really figure out how to bring together this intersection of fantasy player, collectors, people who go out and buy, for example, physical sports cards, Panini or whatever, right? That side of the world, people who love battling with TCG card games, Madden Ultimate Team players. Like, I think we'll start to even see more than that. It won't just be as simple as they're going to score a lot of fantasy points and it's rare, so I'll pay a lot. But I think there'll also be like collector affinity and other things that start to come into play. So over time, we're really hoping our roadmap like unlocks more and more, not just the utility for the card, but more types of customers, more types of collectors that then kind of broaden out the overall ecosystem and just create more and more value for different pockets of cards,
Love that. I can definitely see the kind of various different addressable audiences for this. And probably even possibly non-sports fans, depending on how the other NFT markets are going. People might just dip in and say, you know what it is, this is a better market. This is a more liquid market, or for whatever else it might be. If you played yourself, what was your favorite card from last year? What was the one that you were most proud of when you got in a pack?
So we don't play because of company rules. We don't anything that's peer to peer. The employees don't play because that's kind of like a no-go. We run the games. We have a lot of information on, like, our database has every transaction that's happened. Just felt it would be unfair, and in some cases there's even regulations about that. So we stay away from actually competing in the game. But geez, I don't know. I mean, I always thought pulling Tom Brady's was cool because it was his last season. So probably something like Tom Brady would have been my favorite pull to see. Wasn't the most valuable, but I thought, going down this thesis of over time, what cards have a storyline, it's typically rookies, or it'd be like, if it's somebody like Tom Brady, the first and only season where he has content in the game. So maybe it's not even usable in fantasy, but it has that inherent like cool factor in the collector value.
I like that. That's interesting. And what's been the community response to Reignmakers? I mean, in terms of maybe the traditional customers, or some new community members that you may not have necessarily seen. Are you seeing kind of Twitch streamers and YouTubers coming up doing DraftKings content now? Are you seeing traditional customers who would have just been in the betting book now starting to try something new? From a customer or community perspective, what do you see happening?
So a couple things. It's, of all the products we've built, this one has no template. It's a completely new innovation, right? And when you think about sports betting or casino or even like a salary cap daily fantasy, other companies are running these games. There's often a track record of what works and doesn't work for years. And so creating a sports book is it's no walk in the park for sure, but like there's some things you can look at and you can reference and like infer what would be a good use of time or not, and what's going to be well received or not, promotions, etc. In this world, it's like a complete white space. So we're making a game that never existed. No one has created this game before. And so I would say the amount of engagement directly with the community through like our Discord community or social media, much more frequent, much more intense, lots of different focus groups. It has an early adopter community, like most new games, that's extremely active and like very vocal. And a lot of the roadmap can drive off of just understanding from your early adopter community. It's like things we would have never thought to work on kind of end up on the roadmap through those engagements with like your super users, basically, right? And So I'd say it's been much more of a iterative development based on constantly just keeping a pulse on what we're hearing and learning. And at the same time, we're trying to keep a rudder on the basic vision of the game, which is we want to converge all of these communities together into like the dream game for, if you're a collector, fantasy player, TCG battle game person, Madden Ultimate Team player, whatever. This, like, what we want to hear and what we're starting to hear more and more is like, this is the perfect combination of everything that I love. Even people who are like, they like day trading stocks and things like that. We're hearing, oh, I like day trading stocks, so I like looking at the marketplace and seeing what's happening with the players and like what might go up or down. So we have that general vision, and then we're trying to pull out like, okay, what makes sense that we're learning about where we're hitting the mark or missing the mark.
Interesting. There's definitely some subcultures within, if you think in the video game sectors particularly as well, the trading part of it is, there's people who don't really love the game, but they really want to make money on the marketplace, or they really want to kind of figure out the data and trading mechanic, or the most effective technique, or they just trade to get to the highest possible team count, and don't care a jot about playing the game or the sports. Particularly in kind of different sports games, YouTube subculture, you'll find the kind of the extremes of each type of content, depending on who they are. Right? So you'll get extreme content channels where you'll just see clips of the best goals or the best touchdowns or whatever else. At the other end of the spectrum, you'll see like the pure traders who come off on YouTube like crypto traders almost. They're saying like, this is the data, this is what's coming up, this is the narrative we're playing. These players might be coming big right now, or this coming season could be big for whatever else, and they'll be providing kind of the insider knowledge, or probably not insider because they're not insiders, but the informed perspectives that other people might get into. And have you seen many of those kind of content creators pop up around the Reignmakers series?
Yeah, it's a lot of in the fantasy realm. That's really where the most strength is today. I think we still have a lot of opportunity in the collector realm, like people who typically would write about the sports card market, new releases, like big sales in auction house, like that kind of thing. I think more to do there, but we've had like great momentum in the fantasy space, and also starting to get more exposure in the NFT land because of just having a top rated project, basically like one of the highest grossing projects with the most like active users and demand. And so I think it's probably going to end up building inside out from fantasy, getting into digital collectible kind of content creators. And then hopefully, if we're doing it right, it starts to get more into gamers, starts to get more into collectors of physical traditional sports cards and things like that over time. And we're trying to like keep it pretty organic as well, because it's not exactly a great time. This is more of a judgment based call, but not exactly a great time to be jamming with aggressive marketing like crypto quote unquote type projects. I think it ends up getting poorly received pretty often, and there's so much difficulty I think people have fleshing out what is some kind of like, it's getting marketed to me because it's a scam versus it's getting marketed to me because it's like an actual great product. And I don't think marketers have totally figured out how to like identify their project as like a high quality authentic project and get out of the noise yet of all of that.
I think it's an important point you make, because if you look at the technology application around Reignmakers, it's mostly a transparency mechanism, but there's also a trading component to that too. So you've got the ability to create a secondary marketplace and to be able to have trusted digital assets be traded. So there is an authenticity, there is a transparency, and there is a trading component to that. And that's not scammy. That's actually just business mechanics. You could do similar with a database if you chose to. You could do similar on cloud if you choose to. Right, video games provide comparable, or at least analogous examples of the same functionality, but you have to trust the servers, or you have to trust that the servers aren't going to get hacked, or you have to trust that the drop rates are what they say on the tin and that there's no nefarious business going on. For you guys, also as a regulated business, transparency I think is essential. That's got to be one of your core core capabilities. It's got to be one of your core tenets of a regulated gaming business. So the technology, I think, fits nicely with your brand in that instance. But again, anything Web3, crypto, NFT can be unfairly colored for certain reasons. So I can imagine that's been something where your marketeers have had to decide how much blockchain do they want to sprinkle into the overall story.
Right. Yeah, and that trust piece is really important. That's kind of what's underneath the, like, in today's 2023 version of the world. We feel much more comfortable keeping it in the ecosystem because DraftKings is trusted. We have 3.5 billion of revenue in our other products, like sports betting and whatever. And a lot of the Reignmakers players are, initially they come in on something like sports betting or daily fantasy and then adopt Reignmakers as like a additional thing they're doing, you know. So some people come in just for the game, but it's also a lot of what you'd call like cross sell, or a lot of people joining like a second activity on the site. And so the idea of like disappointing or undermining the relationship that we have with customers who are like using us for a bunch of stuff, really like not an option. So rather just have less sales, have less revenue, have Reignmakers do worse and maintain trust than ever take any like reputational risk. So that's our I think that builds a good foundation to build a successful game, but it still takes time and proving it. And that's hopefully a big part of what this season will be about is, you know, second iteration. We can show how much we've developed the product, learned from year one, and just keep building momentum.
Brilliant. I hope so. It sounds like a lot of hard work has got into it. And above and beyond the challenges that your marketeers are having in how exactly to talk about Reignmakers and the proposition to different audiences, what have been some of the other challenges of working with blockchain technology? It sounds like it's been relatively easy to wheel it into your existing tech stack, but for those people on the outside looking in or who are considering developing similar projects, what have been some of the not so easy things that you've had to overcome?
So year one was a lot of the basic kind of like tech ops and the just getting the initial platform rolling. You know, there was a lot of work just to make sure basic capabilities work. So I feel like early on, the feeling was more like, hey, I want to put something that has some, you know, like I want it to be an exciting consumer facing experience. I want it to have a little bit of like that gold plating that makes it feel like A+ quality platform. And it's hard to get to that deep in the roadmap in a short amount of time. So I felt like early on, it was probably more like, okay, getting the core functionality of this new technology working and getting that to solve our use cases for Reignmakers, like the minting, pack breaks, being able to fulfill on the utility that we want. Yeah, all of that kind of stuff was just so much work. It was hard to make it also look amazingly polished, you know. And so I feel like that was probably the biggest challenge. And that being said, I think of a lot of people working on blockchain projects, or at least in 2021, 2022, had very short horizons on what they would view as like the life of the project. It might even just be one NFT drop and then who knows, right? Or it wasn't necessarily like a build it for a multi-year horizon. And
Yuval from Digital Asset calls them short-term ideas, which I think is the nicest possible way of describing pump and dumps.
Yeah. And so it can be a little bit delayed gratification, right? When you're building something over the course of years instead of for short. And like we've never stopped developing our platform, never stopped working on Reignmakers at any point, and just started like farming or some, you know, we're going to keep building and investing in the game. And we think it could be way bigger, like way bigger than it is today. And we think we could expand it to many sports, and we think we could expand it to a lot of geography outside of the US, and like lots of things, lots of ambition that makes you want to invest in like a multi-year roadmap on the platform. And yeah, I think like just think about the current market. I'd say it's a little challenging to like it's hard almost to get excited about multi-year blockchain projects in this current market. So you have to kind of like temper your expectations on like how excited maybe the reception will be to different proposals. Like, hey, we should really invest big in this or something. It's a tough sell. So I think it might end up being a little bit more of a slow burn for a while, and we'll see kind of like how the market develops. But it'll be like a steady improvement, but maybe not as much of like that immediate gratification as I'd hope, because the tech is a little complex.
There's something to be said for slow, deliberate, trusted growth, as opposed to firing everything all at once and it all going a bit crazy and missing the mark. Like you said, if your loyal customers dislike a part of your product, it might be that affects the wider portfolio of what you do. If somebody has a negative customer experience in one part of your business, that's you everywhere. And so I think you're right to be mindful that you don't want to create a negative experience. If you were to expand into one other sport, non-American sport, let's go there for a minute. You're not allowed to choose hockey or I'm trying to think. X Games, UFC.
Yeah.
What would be the next one you'd go for outside the US?
Yeah. So today we have 3 sports with Reignmakers. We do NFL, UFC, and PGA Tour golf, and all of those are with league IP. Like we have relationships with the UFC and the PGA Tour, and so we're at 3. And I would say outside the US sport, I would probably go with, oh goodness, cricket.
Big following, global sports, lots of international recognition. Major nations like India, UK, Australia, big Web3 nations as well. So you've got a bit of crossover with the blockchain world at the same time. I could see that work. I think more challenging sports, swimming might not have the same amount of appeal.
Yeah,
Kabaddi.
Tennis comes to mind as a decent. Like, there's lots of players who have a chance, who are competitive, great group of young players who are kind of coming up through the ranks. Lots of ability to speculate on the future. It's really high frequency as well. Lots of matches all the time globally.
Yeah, and I guess you probably maybe also looking at the overlap between sports betting in certain categories, right? So those people who are interested in sports betting and gaming, and also that sport at the same time, where that sport is also fits the content format, might be interesting. I've never actually looked at which sports are bet on the most in the world, but there might be an interesting overlap as well.
Yeah, tennis is way up there, actually, if you would believe it. Because people, what they actually like to do in the sports book is, believe it or not, predict every point or like every set, or it's more fractionalized throughout the match. So you see a lot more engagement in terms of like in-game betting in tennis. Ends up being a really good sport. So yeah, tennis is way up there,
Very good. Well, Reignmakers tennis coming soon, maybe. Let's see. We've got enough coming on with the current season. Let's make sure that season 2 is successful and we get it out the door and we have kind of the best or an improved experience for the users. Final question from me, Matt, is around advice to others. So you've been on obviously a game building journey, a new product building journey, almost a new venture building journey within DraftKings, which has obviously been super exciting and probably stressful at times as well. When it comes to blockchain technology and the use of blockchain technology in let's call it a non-Web3 native business. Your business wasn't born on the blockchain. It isn't fundamentally digital assets everywhere all the time. There will be cloud, there will be on-prem, there will be traditional web type of experiences. This is not a DApp per se. So for those people who are out there looking at making use of Web3 technology, whether it's NFTs, whether it's marketplaces, whether it's digital content, what would be your advice to others in terms of helping them to kind of skip past some of the pitfalls that you've had on your journey, or some of the important things that you learned along the way?
I think there's 2 versions of that. One is if you're working at a company and you're trying to look into, like DraftKings was here before our first dollar got invested in blockchain tech. And So if you're working on a company that already has an existing brand, and I think the most important thing is making sure your project makes sense, and like based on what your brand is, what you stand for, what you're trying to serve for your customers, trying to apply it in a way that actually makes sense for your customers that you already have. Because if you're somewhere off in left field trying to extend the brand in a very unnatural way, it doesn't obviously make sense to your customers why you're doing it, and it won't be as likely to work. Like we're much better off, I think, building a competitive fantasy game with like some speculation and collectible and whatever. Like much better off doing that than say PFP drops, which like people would be like, why are you doing PFP drops as DraftKings? You're not, that makes no sense, right? And so if you're at an existing company, make sure it's laddering up to your project is laddering up to the bigger purpose. And then entrepreneurs, I would say like, look, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons and you're clear on what your reasons are, which some people are just like, I want to make money quickly or whatever. And
short-term ideas are okay, but maybe let's think about longevity.
No problem. Yeah, I understand that, but I think my suggestion would be, unless you want to take a risk of being associated with like quick money grab kind of projects that were like rug pulls or scams or something, like be mindful about the quick money motivation. Like just like have a real plan around over the course of time what you're actually trying to create, you know? And from there, I think patience is probably the most important thing. Like I would not go into any new long-term intended Web3 project with the intention of like everybody telling you how amazing it is right now and patting you on the back. It's going to be a lot of hard work and you're going to need a lot of persistence and probably some patience. And the market is cyclical. It comes back and in and out like every market. And I think especially in a time like this, it's a great time to build because there's probably less competition creating new things. And generally speaking, less crazy like, oh my God, the company just raised like $100 million to do exactly what I want to do. It might be a little bit of a quieter period to create something in a reasonable way on slow burn that has a long-term intention. And I would just make sure you have patience, you have the perseverance to get through a period of time that might be no immediate gratification for a year, 2 years, but then one day you'll have your day in the sun, you know?
Love that. Building in the bear market, fully endorsed by Matt Kalish. And thank you again for providing something for the entrepreneurs and for the corporates. It is a broad audience. It is a broad church that we have on the show. And genuinely, I think it depends very much. I've been worked with both, right? From working with Web3 builders right up to kind of Fortune 500 companies. It's a different tactic. It's a different strategy. The messaging is different. The fundraising is different. The motivations are different. The technology is the same, right? That's the interesting part is it's kind of what you do with it and how you apply it, whether it is your business or whether it is a new business line. And it's been really interesting to hear the Reignmakers journey because honestly, it's when you think about it, it's really obvious. It's like that should absolutely bang. That is the crosshair, or that is the intersection of so many really good things that people love already, but in a format that we haven't done yet. And you know, from your perspective, you're sitting on a business that is successful in a business that's already successful, or that is a business that's likely to be successful, but it's still been a tough time. Those 18 months have been hard. And so if it's hard for you guys, it's probably hard for everybody, but there's probably hope on the horizon. I appreciate that you took time to speak with us. Really appreciate your time to give us your advice, your learnings, and wishing you all the very best for the next season. You put in the work. You've got some great technology partners behind you, and very excited to see what comes next for you guys.
Looking forward to it. I think it'll be a really amazing season. I hope everyone can check out the game, and thank you so much. It was a great conversation.
Appreciate that, Matt. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe out there.
Take care.
Bye-bye.